Welcome to episode 2 of the Fantasy Kickabout. Thank you to everyone who's checked out our podcast from last week. We really do appreciate it. Anyways, back to this week's episode. Joining us for Kickabout is, and back by popular demand, the manager of a total of 147 points in game week 19, and the man who said the foul on Cavani wasn't a foul. Yes, the Scouser is back, David O'Hara. And next up, making his debut on the pod, a player who only scored screamers on the pitch for Maynooth University back in the day. But when it comes to managing his FPL team, he's got a hint of Roy Keane about him. Questioning injured players, shouting at his app when a defender concedes a goal, and barely cracks a smile when his captain scores a hat-trick. Please welcome another Manchester United fan, Ian Keelan. So guys, welcome to the pod, Ian, and welcome back, David. I guess I was just expecting for us to chat about Man United sitting top of the table off the back of a great win against bitter rivals Liverpool in the FA Cup. But so much has happened this week between Lampard getting sacked, obviously Sheffield United's shock win last night. So we might start with what went wrong at Old Trafford on Wednesday night, Ian.
A lot of things went wrong. I mean, the game just seemed so bland from the start. You know, United were doing a lot of left to right sort of Wan-Bissaka over the Tellez. You know, the switches were being made, but it was consistently in their own half or on the halfway line. Like, to jump to a comparison straight away, when you look at Liverpool and they do something like that, if it's Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, it's right to left, but it's at pace. Robertson's made his space maybe 20 yards out left of the box. He's there. It's an open space that as soon as he opens up with a first touch, it's in to the most dangerous area you could ask for in around the 6-yard box. United were doing it and it was halfway line and all this, and just, I suppose it lacked a lot of character that we've seen in the last few weeks. I mean, Fernandes didn't have his best game again, but when you look at individual moments from the game, he had that moment that sticks out really where he tracked maybe 40, 50 yards the whole way back, put in the tackle to what should have been a counter-attack, and instead it was Fernandes intercepts it, and suddenly it's more 5-6 yard passes around the halfway line, an 8-man Sheffield United wall, and they start with 2 central defensive midfielders. I mean, we should have known from the start that Sheffield United were going to line up as defensively as they did. You know, they're fighting for their lives at the bottom of the league, and then they're coming up against a team who are fighting, well, as of now we can say they're in a title battle. Who knows what the next few weeks will bring, but it was obvious that they were not going to go to attacking. It was always going to try and work on counter-attacking football. And it worked. They caught United on the hop. United just didn't seem prepared. And the likes of Martial, look what happened, I suppose, after the game is disgust and act in itself. And, you know, hopefully that gets dealt with. But on the pitch, no, he didn't have a good game. And, I mean, you could argue that himself and Rashford were lucky to see as long in the game as they did. It needed a spark. It needed something. And I don't know. I think it just, in general, it wasn't there for United last night. I don't know. I think it was all areas rather than putting your finger on one area, really.
Yeah, I agree. As a United fan, like when you're watching it, it was a case of everyone was off form last night, which, like in the last couple of weeks, you might have had, I don't know, we'll say Martial not performing, but Rashford was performing. You might have had Cavani on form and Greenwood off form. There was only one, maybe 2 players that weren't off form, but I just felt last night, every single United player, including De Gea, including Fernandes, including Pogba, the top 3 were just completely off form. No kind of rhythm, no momentum, no creativity, no ideas. I remember at one stage looking, and it was Martial centre forward, Rashford I think was out on the left, Greenwood was on the right, and literally the 3 of them were standing on the defender, literally on his toe. And I was like, they're not moving. I don't know, are they expecting the ball to be played into Martial and for him to hold it up and then hoping that Fernandes comes in? But again, there was none of that. And I don't think it's happened as often this season either compared to how United finished the season last year. But there's not a lot of that movement between Martial, Rashford, Greenwood. And I know there's the debate of, yeah, Rashford's better out on the left. Martial, for me, I think is better out on the left as well. So then you have two players fighting for one position, and one of them potentially is going to be a little unhappy being in the centre forward position or out on the right. That's not their preferred position. Yeah, no, I agree. A lot of things went wrong, but I'd say Dave was rubbing his hands last night, saying, right, this is kind of an opportunity for Liverpool potentially to kind of bounce back. But I don't know if you watched the game last night, Dave, but would you say United are out of the title race from one defeat?
Yeah, no, I didn't watch it. I don't generally. I like to do things better with my time than waste a bit of time watching a United match. I'll watch the highlights, all right, if it's on Match Today. But
fair.
Like that, I'd watch all of the Liverpool matches. So I've enough time put into it than to be wasting time watching a United match. Again, as well, the fact that they were coming up against Sheffield United, I thought it was a foregone conclusion that it was just going to be a straightforward win. Like Fernandes has been playing brilliant for who knows how long at this stage, and I thought it'd just be a walkover with the likes of him, and Pogba seems to have been in good form recently as well. No, it's like we were saying last week, like Liverpool being 6 points off the top, they're not out of the title race. So like United aren't. Like realistically, it's one of the most interesting title run-ins, like in who knows how long, because any team of United, City, Liverpool, Tottenham, Leicester, even the likes of Everton and West Ham are lurking there just behind everyone as well. So, you're never going to say, oh my God, imagine West Ham are going to win the league. But like, logically speaking, they're not that far behind either. Do you know what I mean? No, so absolutely one loss. I was delighted to see the loss, absolutely. But no, that doesn't rule them out at all. I think it'll go another while and another few bad results before they're definitely out of the race, I'd say.
Yeah, and just before we kind of touch on Liverpool and just kind of where they go, Ian, you mentioned kind of Martial last night. I was looking back through kind of some of his numbers over the last couple of years, and obviously last season was his best season in terms of scoring. I think it was 23 in all competitions, 17 in the league. And I think you have to go back nearly as far as his debut season, where he hit 17 goals, 11 in the league. How do you sum up Martial at the moment? He just looks... Personally, I think it's been his worst season so far, but yet he still manages to get game time ahead of Cavani and Greenwood. I know Greenwood had his issues at the start of the season, but...
Yeah, it's so frustrating to watch. And I mean, like, he's not a hold-up striker, so straight away you've lost that area of the game when you play him centre forward. It has to be, it can be 1-2's defeat, fair enough, but like Cavani will do a job of being strong and holding off a defender. He's also incredibly mobile and has an aerial ability as well. He hit the post with that chance, last weekend. It would have been nice to see it go in, but I mean, I think the only thing I can put my finger on as to how Martial consistently keeps getting a run in the team is because the ability is there to make the switches with Rashford. So Martial can go wide, Rashford can go through the middle. Same as Greenwood, if needs must, he can go through the middle. And again, you could have Martial and Rashford wide. If you start Cavani at centre forward, you don't really, go away from that. He is your centre forward. Not that it's a negative thing, but it almost seems like it's in United's tactics this year now that we're going to keep opposition defenders on their toes and we're going to keep the switches going. That, like, we'll use Liverpool as the example. 1 minute Rashford's on Alexander-Arnold, the next minute he's in and he's on Fabinho and Henderson. He's keeping them on their toes, and Alexander-Arnold has a new battle in Martial or Greenwood or whoever it happens to be. It's not always the best tactic, and I don't want to jump down United's throat after one loss last night. I think it's just the feeling of the loss that you're playing the bottom of the table team who really have struggled this year, like really badly. And you're thinking, how do you go from beating Liverpool in the FA Cup, having a good run of fixtures in the Premier League, to then losing to the bottom of the table team. It's the little bit of character that they'd shown in those previous few games. And like, I'd be the first person to admit I've jumped down Pogba's throat. Like, I've just been so annoyed at his performances for a long time now. He has been absolutely immense in the last few games, and he really has been the one who's driven United through these wins. He got the goals against Fulham, that goal against West Ham. He's absolutely flying. And it just seemed like it wasn't there last night. And I mean, you can put it down to Martial played bad. You can put it down to Luke Shaw was missing to secure that back four. But at the end of the day, I think it had to be an overall thing that caused the loss. And I mean, Martial, look, that's a question only Solskjaer can answer, really. I mean, why he does keep including him in the teams. As fans were looking, thinking, surely he has to be dropped. It's the only way. It's like a scenario if you were managing a team yourself. If a player is underperforming, you put him on the bench, you start someone else, and you say, right, show me working behind the scenes and get your place back. Show me the improvements, because the reason you've been dropped is because you're underperforming, but it's because of XYZ factors. You're not showing heart, your dribbling is off, you need more work on your passing. Do that and come back to me and show me you can make it back into the team. And I think as long as he's going to ride his luck and keep getting into the starting 11 like this, we're not going to see the improvements we need from a United fan perspective. So I think it might be time for even 60 minutes of a match on the bench and let him come on with half an hour to go and say, right, you've seen the standard set to now, show us what you've got.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it interesting that a Man United fan saying how much we missed Shaw at the back. Again, a couple of months ago, I would have again held my hand up and said, kind of getting a bit fairly pissed off at Pogba, Martial, Luke Shaw at this stage, but he has had an incredible turnaround, and we obviously did chat about him last week, Dave. Just in terms of Liverpool, obviously the FA Cup defeat to United, but as a Liverpool fan, I'm sure you can take a lot of positives out of that game, where obviously Firmino, Salah were kind of back on a bit of form, obviously scoring goals, assisting, but obviously other elements of Liverpool's game let them down last weekend. Where do you see Liverpool going from here? Obviously, to have the game tonight against Spurs, and then I think it's away to West Ham on the weekend.
Obviously, I suppose scoring a couple of goals was nice, wasn't it? Like, after going 3 or 4 games without a goal. I think, like, first half we were looking good until then United equalised, and then it was like, oh crap, is it just going to be like it's been over the last few weeks, that we just don't look like ourselves and can't get a foothold in the game? But I think after Rashford scored, then straight into the second half, after that, then for at least 20 minutes, half an hour, Liverpool, I thought, were by far the better team. Like, they got the equaliser about 10 minutes later, and I thought for a good 15 minutes, 20 minutes after that, looked the strongest team. So it was only really, from about 75 maybe, that it got back a bit balanced. And then sure, it was just kind of the bad luck of conceding the free kick, and sure, like, what are you going to do with a free kick like that? From Fernandes, like, it's the kind of thing where, like, you might get a pundit being like, oh, you should never concede at the keeper's post from a free kick, but, like, Alisson is no mug, like, he's a top quality keeper, and it was just a world class free kick, so it was kind of one of those where, like, it goes in and, like, oh, like, what are we supposed to do about that? Do you know what I mean? It was kind of like the Kiev final, like when Bale scores the overhead kick. It was like, come on, like, how are we supposed to compete with that? Do you know? So it was a pity, because I thought, second half especially, we had kind of looked a bit back to ourselves. But it was just a pity. We were looking like ourselves, but not enough like ourselves, in terms of when we went 3-2 down then with only about 10 minutes to go. It was like, like the last few games now, we don't seem the team like we did last season, where we can claw a result back in the last 5-10 minutes, So it was obviously more positive than the previous games, because we played a good bit of good football, scored a few goals. As you said, Firmino and Salah linked up nicely for the goals. But yeah, as we were saying just before, like tonight's a massive game, and it can at this point of the season really make or break the confidence of either team. Really, like that. Like Liverpool have just not been in a good reign of form for the last little while. So, especially having lost the unbeaten home run, like that's going to hurt them massively. So I like the sounds of Klopp now coming out in the press conferences where he kind of seems a bit more upbeat, but the stuff he's saying is kind of like, we need to go back to be, the annoying team that people really don't like playing, and just no matter what actual form you're in, that people are still afraid to go play, which I think has been chipped away at the last couple of weeks. So yeah, I think a good performance and a win now tonight would be massive, and could go a long way to turn the season around.
Yeah, like one thing I noticed as a United fan, it was Liverpool's had their press again. Obviously not 100%, but it was a lot better compared to some of the other games that they've been playing. We might just touch on Bruno Fernandes's free kick, because obviously it popped up in the group that I think, Dave, you were the only one that didn't think it was a free kick at the time. I don't know if you changed your opinion since.
Yeah, I got outnumbered fairly lively there, so I kind of just put my head back down. Honestly, when I first saw it, I was fuming. I was like, no way is that a free kick. Like, I could see why the ref gave it, because it looked like he got fouled, and from the ref's perspective, Cavani was quite, in my opinion at the time, Cavani was very clever in the way that he won it. I didn't bother going back to look at it, to be honest, because I was raging. But when the likes of Donica and all were saying in the WhatsApp group that it was a foul and go back and look at it, I was like, okay, fair enough, it probably was. But even if it wasn't, it was given and it was scored, so there wasn't much I could do to change it at that point.
And just a reminder, Donica is a Liverpool fan as well, so but like I just saw it, and Ian, I don't know whether you'd agree or not, but I when it happened, I was thinking Cavani's the only player on that pitch that would win a free in that position. Like, I don't think a Rashford, Martial would have been winning a free. The way Cavani placed his body and his legs in front of Fabinho, just genius, wasn't it? It just showed, coming from experience, that's what he can bring to the Man United front line.
Exactly, and that's the sort of thing. I go back to what I said earlier on, that you lose when Martial plays as your striker. You lose that hold-up game. Cavani can receive a ball with a defender glued to his back, and he'll either control it or draw the foul like he did against Fabinho. Look, I think it was a foul, that his knee went through the back of him. Look, I'm obviously going to say that from a United perspective, and it was an unbelievable free kick. But back to Cavani, for me, I'd absolutely love to see him start more games. I don't know if fitness-wise or age-wise or whatever the case may be in the training ground there, they know the ins and outs of whether or not he can start. So there's no point us sitting here giving out that he's not, when there could be a reason he's not. But I still think he's a diamond in the rough. Like, he is exactly what United need to get through games, because you're looking at playmakers like Fernandes and Pogba, who has really come to form now, and you're thinking, where's my target? And you see Cavani ahead of you, and if you see an on-form Rashford even on the left-hand side, straight away you're looking up and you can see 1 and 2, and you're thinking, if I give it to either of them, they're going to do a job for me, or they're going to hold it up for me. Cavani's going to hold it up for me till I get on his shoulder, or if I give it to Rashford out left, he's going to take on the man. And I think that's where it's really, really needed. And again, I go back to Shaw. Shaw is another serious link there with Cavani. His deliveries in the last few weeks have been brilliant. His support runs from the left to get alongside the winger to deliver ball into the box has been brilliant. And Cavani is the one on the United team from a non-set piece situation. Obviously, we've got Maguire and Bailly and things like that. But if you're in general play and you're thinking, I'm on the wing or I'm a full back, I'm crossing this in, where's my target? You're only looking at Cavani. And it's just that extra option or two. That's all we're looking for, is that if the game is not going your way, is there option two? Our passing game to slot players through the gaps of the back line isn't working, like Sheffield United, who play 5 at the back and 2 or 3 sitting in front of them. You're talking about an 8-man wall there. If they play that right, which they did, there's no gaps. We had to resort to a set piece, and luckily Maguire's strong and he's big and he got ahead of his man. But if the ball through the gaps is not working, you need option two. And he was that, and it would have been nicer to see him on the pitch from the start, and given Martial's bad run of form lately, giving him those few minutes at the end, maybe he could have had an impact as fresh legs. You know, the game could have gone differently. United could have been ahead early on. Sheffield might have to push them. Suddenly that's your time for Martial, when Sheffield United haven't got 8 men dropped, and suddenly there is little gaps appearing. So look, I mean, everybody's going to have their opinion on where it went wrong, but I just think Cavani is just such a serious outlet to have. Like, we're lucky to have him at the club, and I think we need to utilize him a little bit more.
Yeah.
I was thinking as well, guys, sorry to cut across it. Question kind of for both of you. Like, Cavani's one of those, like, proper just out and out strikers. You know, he's not, you know, an attacking midfielder changed into a striker, or a winger pushed into the middle or anything like that. He's a striker. He's a goal scorer. Why do you think he's so, I suppose, well regarded now, and so, like Ian was saying, like, essential to United probably playing well, where the likes of Lukaku weren't really, you know, I suppose, respected in that regard, and kind of was kicked out of the club because it was like, oh, well, he doesn't play the way we kind of play. Where then he's gone on and, you know, scoring tons of goals for Inter Milan, like he has done at all his other clubs as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know if it's just based on reputation. If you look at Cavani's reputation against Lukaku's when he came to United, Lukaku's first touch was absolutely shocking, and I think
it was. Yeah,
a lot of people will agree with that.
Yeah.
He was a goal scorer, and he scored plenty of goals for United, but I just don't think he suited United. And then kind of towards the end, obviously a bit with his attitude, where he was posting, I think it was the running stats of him and all the United teammates. They're sort of things you don't do. And obviously he was in whatever situation he was in about leaving the club at that stage, so he didn't care. But I think to be honest, that the main thing is reputation with Cavani. He's been there, he's done it. But I do have to say there was a lot of question marks at the start of the season from United fans asking, why are we signing Cavani? Like, should we not be getting a centre half? Should we not be getting a right winger? Why are we signing Cavani? I know a lot of people weren't particularly happy with the signing of Cavani, but they were happy to sign Cavani, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it seemed a strange one at the time, but at the same time, like, as you said, like, his reputation with PSG was huge.
Yeah.
Ian, I don't know if you agree with the reputation thing compared to Lukaku.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you have to look at United developing as a team as well. I mean, Bruno Fernandes has been just the outlet that everything has come through since he's arrived at the club. So could you make an argument that we should have given Lukaku longer to maybe try and gel more with your new playmaker? You know, things just don't happen overnight. Obviously, these things can take time. But I think go back to Cavani, it is his reputation, it is his abilities. He's just an all-round world-class striker. And again, like you said, it was doubt at the start. Why are we signing Cavani? He's pushing on in age in terms of a footballer and things like that. Is he going to give us the same every game? Is he going to have the fitness to get through most games? And at the time, exactly what you hit on, United were like, where is our defender? Where are our defenders? Like, we are leaking. Where are our defenders? We can be proved wrong at times now, I guess, given the league position. Not that it's perfect. It's never going to be perfect every week, but I am delighted we did sign Cavani. I go straight back to that Southampton game, the 3-2, when, I mean, he got that winner at the end. And I remember just like that goal going in and jumping around my sitting room, just because it felt like a real turning point, that like we can claw back these negative positions. And if you're going to have someone like him at the helm as well, who's going to come on and lead your line like that, it can only give you hope. So I'm delighted we signed him anyway, that's for sure.
Yeah, And like I agree. I do think he needs to play more. I think he needs to play more from the start. And I do agree with you, Ian, where you were saying that maybe a Martial or a Rashford coming off, or Greenwood coming off the bench with pace could be the difference in some of those games, for example, with Sheffield United. But before we kind of move on from obviously talking United, Liverpool, just two things I wanted to touch on. Number one, and I don't normally do it, but I was very critical of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer last night for his decision-making, in-game decisions. And the fact that he didn't make any changes, like straight away I was thinking, and I know the WhatsApp group kind of lit up at halftime, to get some legs on, get McTominay on, because he can drive forward with the ball, whereas Matic kind of just sits there, plays the ball left, right, keeps the ball nice and tidy. But that's not what we needed last night. We needed, I felt, a Scott McTominay who gets on the ball. Yeah, Scott McTominay is not perfect, but he will try things. He'll try pass the ball forward. He'll try drive and dribble forward with the ball. So I would have been sticking McTominay on a half time, and I would have been sticking Cavani on a half time. Would you throw criticism at Solskjaer's direction for his decisions last night and his substitutes or lack of substitutes until obviously the last 6 minutes, maybe 7 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely questionable. And you could even argue that being in the position United were in, either at 1-0 down or 1-1, is there a formation change on? I mean, we've got an 8-man wall in front of us. We're playing bottom of the league. It has to be 3 points. Like going into that game last night, I was honestly, it's naivety now when I look back at it. And I was sitting there thinking, I was on Paddy Power thinking this could be 3 or 4. Like, these boys are bottom of the league. They're in absolutely diabolical form. We've got some in-form players at the minute. It's just, it's going to be good. It came back to bite me in the end, and you're looking at it during the game thinking this needs Cavani. Again, like you said, it mightn't exactly be McTominay. It could be someone else, but the game definitely needs a switch. But are you going to go for a formational switch? Are you going to go to a flat 4-4-2, leave your 2 wide men and your 2 overlapping fullbacks if that's the case, but give us that extra outlet in the box that at least if we are taking on this 8-man wall that they had, that we can go aerial. Cavani will give us the option in the air. It gives one of your centre midfielders a chance that, okay, I'm going to be the anchor here in front of the back 4 on the off chance they do go on a counter-attack. Like, you know, Burke was doing it a lot. McGoldrick was doing a lot of that dirty hold-up play where he'd get the ball against 4 United defenders and literally just waltz around on a sixpence with it until he could either win a throw-in or give it to a support runner. You have your holding midfielder there then. You have your Fred or your McTominay or Matic even if he was left on. Who you take off? Look, we've been through it enough. I think Martial needed to come off. I think Rashford could have had his time off. But it would just, it does, for that game, I'm not going to use it in the broad sense because I think I've been critical of Solskjaer in the past. I've loved him in the last few weeks given United's form. I just think if we're solely basing it on this game, I would be slightly critical as to why changes weren't made sooner, given the circumstance. I mean, the goals, I think Martial's disallowed goal was never a free on the keeper, nor was Sheffield United's on De Gea. I think the two of them fall under the same bracket. If you're going to have contact on the keeper, whether it's from the direct person who's going for the ball or as it was with Sharp where he was a secondary pushing on De Gea, you're either going to give both of them the same decision. It's either yes or no. And I think, I do think Sheffield United's first one was a goal. I also think that United should have been a goal. It's in the past now, and referee's not going to turn around and change his mind now. So, exactly. I mean, all we're going to do from now is look back and think, like you said, where were the subs? You know, you said it yourself. You're usually not one to criticize when it comes to these sort of things. You take a more level-headed approach than I would. I'd be effing and blinding down the phone thinking, where is this lad? But I mean, yeah, it's a strange one, I think, given the circumstances and what was on the line in that game. We know City have a game in hand. We needed those points, and I think we're going to rue that now for the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, did you catch those decisions, the disallowed goal? And
yeah, I saw the goals and the highlights, all right, yeah.
What did you make of it from, we'll say, a non-biased point of view?
not unbiased.
Well, it's hard to be non-biased watching the United match. I just think I think decisions like that are bizarre. Like it's like Ian was saying, it doesn't make sense to give it one direction and then later on in the match give it, and it's basically, it's an equivalent scenario, and then give a totally different decision. Like it's that kind of inconsistency that's doing my head in with the league this season. Like there are times where a decision goes against you, but you're like, okay, fair enough, that is a foul, or like you can see where he's coming from. But like when like that with those kind of fouls, or like with offsides or with VAR, and you're seeing like, oh, this was given a millimeter offside, and then this lad was, you'd say, like clearly onside, and then his toe is keeping him onside or something like that. Like that, yeah, I found it very strange. Obviously, I was delighted the way it went, but had it gone the other way, I would have been fuming. Like that with the City match the other day, like where Rodri had been miles offside. Because obviously I was looking at that from the Liverpool point of view, being like, "Class, this would be brilliant now if City drops some points." And then when I was watching, I was like, surely him being offside counts in that play. You know what I mean? Like he clearly influenced the run of the game. And then literally 2 days later, they've now come out and said, if that ever happens in the future, it'll be offside. Like, well, why couldn't they just, go into his ear and say that at the time? Like, it's quite clear that that's what should have happened.
Too little, too late for people who need City to drop points. Looking at that,
exactly, yeah. But because once the game is over, that's it. It's 3 points for City, and they're not going to change that.
Like it comes down to obviously the rules, and obviously we're probably not going to get into it because we'd be here all evening chatting about the rules. But just to go back before we move on to the disallowed United goal, it was interesting. They said it wasn't reviewed by VAR because the referee had blown his whistle before the ball actually ended up in the net, which meant they weren't reviewing a goal. So
that sort of stuff is nonsense.
So
why would they blow the whistle at sometimes in that scenario and sometimes not? And then for the unlucky team who the referee has decided to blow the whistle, then that team is just screwed over.
It goes back to the City game the other night as well, where the ball was played down the wing to Bernardo Silva and the flag was kept down. And then as the ball was played back to Cancelo, it was raised. West Brom kind of slowed down, stopped. One or two of them might have tried to pressure. Cancelo hits top bins with a left foot, and suddenly they're all thinking, but should we stop? Like that rule is meant to be, well, from what I thought I knew anyway, was that you're meant to play goes dead, flag goes up, then review the entire thing, but let it play out, and then we'll chalk it out. Or if it's a dead duck of an attack, let it go, just play on. But that flag was raised when Bernardo Silva had laid the ball back 20 yards out. Like that's no way a dead play. That's open up your left foot and have a strike at that. And like anyone watching the game, like I missed that part myself. I was doing training and stuff, and I came back into the sitting room and looked at the highlights and just saw it, and I was thinking, like, it's harsh on West Brom. Not that they were going to change the course of the game, like they got absolutely battered, but I mean, it's just one of those things. And it's like Martial's at last night again, and you're thinking, if this rule is in play to aid you in unsure decisions, then don't make something you're unsure of. And the referee, he obviously blew the whistle because he thought in his own head he had made the concrete call. And you could sit here all day, you could go through social medias, and you'll see people say it was a foul because he jumped into the keeper. The likes of me will sit here and say it's not a foul, because if you look at the replays, all eyes on the ball the entire way. His movement brings him into the keeper, but I mean, you're going to shield your body when you're going up for a header. You don't want to clip it off someone. So I just think, look, I'd sit here all night and get vexed about it. I'm going to stop while I'm ahead.
Just before we kind of move on to Lampard's sacking and Thomas Tuchel obviously arriving at Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. Dave, I'm going to ask you, what was more of a shock? Sheffield United winning at Old Trafford last night, or the 7-2 defeat against Aston Villa? What was more of a shock?
I think surely the Aston Villa one. Like that one was just mind blowing. I was like, how is that even possible. I was actually, funnily enough, that was a day where I hadn't got to see the match live, and so I had like turned off all notifications and stuff and tried to avoid the result until match of the day. And I was with my girlfriend, and she happened to look up the result, and she was like, "Oh no, like, can I tell you?" I was like, "No, I've said I'm not looking at it until match of the day." And she was like, "No, like, you need to know." And I was like, "Okay, fine. This one time, like, yeah, I couldn't believe it. I like, it was. I thought that was much more shocking because like that, there's been a few like upsets like last night, but you know, a 2-1 is a very straightforward, explainable result.
Yeah.
Where like 7-2, you're like having existential crises at that point. It's like, how? What are you talking about? 7-2? That can't be right.
Are you glad you didn't see that game live? You probably need a
Oh,
new you probably need a new telly or something in the house by the
I
end of
was
it.
so glad. I was so glad because I had it recorded. I think I actually had the match itself recorded, and my dad was going to watch on Match of the Day. So I was like, "Grand, I'll watch the match now in a little while, and I'll text Dad and see what he thought of it." And then I saw the result, and I was like, "Oh no!" Like, well, I'm obviously not watching it back because why would I bring myself to do that? But also, then I was like, "Oh God, I'm gonna have to tell Dad," because he'd be like me if he doesn't see the result, he'll avoid it and watch Match of the Day.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna have to tell him, do not watch Match of the Day," because I knew like that, Ian, like he'd be gone through the telly, like.
Yeah, you'd be down in DID looking for a new telly.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
That was going to be my next question, Dave. Did you actually watch Match of the Day, or did you just avoid it all?
No, I didn't. I didn't even see the goals till about a week later.
Oh God.
Disaster. Yeah, obviously it's been an eventful week for Chelsea fans, for Lampard. Do we look at Lampard sacking Ian and say it's justified, or he should have been given more time, or he had the opportunity with the signings he brought in? In my opinion, it does take time for signings, especially the amount of signings you bring in. It does take time for those players to click, adjust, get used to playing in a different country, in a different league. Do you kind of agree with his sacking, or would you have been in the boat of give Lampard more time? He deserves an opportunity.
It's a tough one. I mean, Abramovich is ruthless. I think everybody knows that at this stage. Like, they've been through, is it like 12 managers maybe or something since Mourinho?
Yeah, that's it. And Lampard knows that more than anyone, because sure, he was a player for most of those as well.
That's it. He would have been in the camp as a player. He would have been through the ringer of managers and seeing the likes of Benitez and Di Matteo get about 6 to 8 months each, and then you've got Mourinho for 2-3 years he did at a time. I think he's been let down a bit by some of the signings. I mean, I do think, as you said, Gaz, it does take time to settle into a new club, and you can't be expected to move and become a world beater overnight. But at the same time, like, you know, you're a paid professional. You know, we're into January now. You'd like to think by now you've got some sort of grip on your manager's tactics, your fellow players, how they play. I'm sure when these signings were made, they weren't going into this blank that they didn't know who XYZ on the Chelsea squad was. Like, they would have known these players. So, I mean, tactically, sometimes you can argue that they get it wrong. I mean, Werner off the left hasn't proved successful at all. His goal to game ratio has not been at the races at all. Havertz, obviously, there was that whole debate. I think, did he have COVID? And they were saying that he was suffering COVID side effects. So I'll be sympathetic with him in that respect if that is the case. But yeah, his sacking, I was a bit surprised. And I think the bit I was surprised most at is that morning you see all the reporters like Fabrizio Romano and all of these, and it's suddenly Chelsea set to sack Lampard and bring in Tuchel. And you're thinking, you've got the replacement lined up already. even if you don't sack him now, the rumors are out there and it's circulating, and you've just knocked whatever strain of confidence was left in Lampard as a manager. So, I mean, it's such a tough one. In one respect, you're thinking, okay, like 0-0s against United and Spurs, you've got 2-1 loss to Liverpool. They lost 3-1 to Arsenal, I think, sometime around Christmas there, just after Christmas. That was a shock considering how negative Arsenal are playing this year. So results-wise, you're thinking, is this solely based on the big teams, as we'll call them, the six who are highest in the league at the minute? Results against them haven't been good, but you've only played them once. You know, you still have another round of fixtures to go against most of them, and who knows, things could pick up, but he's not going to get his chance to show it now. It's going to be Tuchel's to try and put his stamp on. So it'll be interesting to see how he works his tactics around what he's got in the squad.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just looking back because I don't know if you've seen over the last day or two, it's showing all the different Premier League teams that have been top of the table and what dates. But Chelsea were top of the table, Dave, on the 5th of December after beating Leeds, I think 3-1 at home. Their next game, Everton, they lost. They beat West Ham. As Ian said, they lost 3-1 to Arsenal, drew at home to Villa, lost to City, beat Fulham 1-0 and lost to Leicester. What do you think, obviously looking as a non-Chelsea fan, what do you think has gone wrong at Chelsea? Do you think that it is too many signings at once? Signings aren't clicking. The COVID issues. Do you think Lampard didn't actually recruit in the right areas? What's your kind of views on that?
I think, like Ian said, it's kind of a combination of good two things like that. Like, I would have thought he deserved a bit more time. Like that, he had his whole first year, he wasn't allowed to sign anyone, so he just had whatever youth players he could promote from the youth team up, you know, as new signings effectively, or the lads he had on loan at Derby and stuff like that. But like, some of his tactics were very strange, like that. Like playing Werner off the left is never going to work. Like he's, like we were saying about the likes of like Lukaku or Cavani. Like he's an out and out striker. He's going to be getting you a goal every game, a goal every 2 games. Playing him off the left is a very strange tactic. So like, yeah, I don't think there was too many new signings. You know, because he hadn't gotten the chance to sign anyone. So like, you know, 5 or 6 really good quality signings, you know, I suppose spaced over the couple of years would have made total sense. And it's just a case of he hadn't gotten to do that in his first year. Like he's been unlucky with a few of them like that. Like Werner, I think, was played out of position, so I think that's on him. Like Havertz, a combination of not settling and coronavirus or whatever, like, you know, that's a hard one. You're never going to predict that. Ziyech is a very good player as well, and he's been injured most of the time, as far as I'm aware. I think just like, again, it's always so far. Like, I think a lot of his tactics were off sometimes, because I remember, because you go through the season, obviously you're so focused on your own team, and I remember seeing that probably mid-December, that stat come out where it was like, Lampard still hasn't beaten a team in the top 10 of the Premier League. And you're looking at it being like, surely that can't be true. And you look back through it, and like that, like the one you just said, you know, the only wins were bottom of the table teams, which obviously you have to be beating. And like, you know, both of our teams have had a poor result.
That's a touchy subject after last night.
Exactly. And sure, even with us last week as well, you know, but yeah, I don't know. You need to be consistent across the board. I think one of the big things was not enough leadership actually in the team. I can't remember. I think we were chatting about this just generally in the past. But like, to bring in someone like Thiago Silva, who is a very good player and, you know, incredibly experienced, but like, to have him as your captain, and the only other leader conceivably in the squad is Azpilicueta, and the reason he wasn't the captain was because he was on the bench or injured at the time. But like, I always just find that that should never really be the case. Like giving a club captain to a brand new player, you should at least have someone who knows the club and knows what the club stands for and stuff like that. So
yeah,
I think it's a mixture of those few things. He was very kind of hit and miss. So look, I'd say he got more time than other managers have gotten under Abramovich. So
yeah, I see it here. He's had since Jose left in 07 when Chelsea were kind of dominant in the Premier League. Chelsea, not including Steve Holland and Ray Wilkins, because they only got a couple of days as interims, they've had 13 managers, including Tuchel.
That's crazy. That's what, 13 in 13 years?
13 and 13.
That's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy, like to think that there's that level of turnover. Like, I suppose some clubs maybe in lower leagues or promoted teams who then sack their manager when they do bad and stuff, this sort of turnover, you could look at it and think, we're not too far off it. But I suppose you're looking at it from a United perspective, who went so long through my United life anyway with Ferguson, that when things started to chop and change, you've got like Mourinho coming in and you've got Van Gaal and you've got Giggs getting his time. You're thinking, this is bonkers. Like, settle with someone, please. So 13 managers in 13 years is just crazy.
Absolutely crazy. I was going to ask, I don't know if either of you noticed last night, but who was captain for Chelsea? Was it Thiago or was it
Azpilicueta?
Was it?
Yeah.
Because it would have been interesting to see what Thomas Tuchel would have done in that scenario, because he's obviously managed Thiago at PSG, and by all accounts he fought strongly for a new contract for him, and that was one of the reasons he had a falling out with the PSG board and Leonardo there at PSG over whether they were going to offer Thiago Silva a new contract. That kind of brings me on to the next point. We look at Thomas Tuchel. A couple of points I'm gonna try to. Chelsea had 433 passes in the first half, and by all accounts that was the highest number of passes in a first half by a team, and also the highest number of passes by a Chelsea team since 2003-2004 season. So that might kind of give us an indication of how Thomas Tuchel wants to play with that Chelsea side. Yeah. Also, I thought it was a huge statement dropping Mason Mount, because as we all know, and I know we joke about it in the group and stuff, Mason Mount is a Frank Lampard player. Yeah. And he was one of the first players to be dropped. So from my kind of perspective, I was looking at that saying, that's Thomas Tuchel laying down a statement saying, this is my team. I'm going to come here and make changes. This is no longer Frank Lampard's team. I don't know what way you think Thomas Tuchel is going to go about it. Like, obviously he only had, I think it was one training session, and I think it might have been even the evening beforehand, because I know they were showing footage on Sky Sports
the night before. He took it the night before.
So I don't know, can you read too much into the 433 passes that he's trying to get a team, a possession-based team? Is he trying to, I don't know, kind of like United use the likes of Pulisic, Ziyech, Werner kind of on the counter-attack? Obviously, it'll take a few games, a few weeks for him to actually work with the players, discover what he wants to do. What way do you see it going with Thomas Tuchel, Dave?
I think it'd be interesting. I think if I was a Chelsea fan, I'd be excited, because I think like we were saying already, like the likes of having Werner on the left and stuff like that, I think Lampard got a few of his tactics wrong and just generally set the team up wrong more often than not. So I think even that, like that's a very impressive stat, and I think does bode well for Chelsea. I think that is, kind of Tuchel's like his way of playing, So I think it'll be very interesting. I think as well, he's very good at like taking a very good player or even just a good player and improving them. I think he has kind of remnants of Klopp off him in terms of, he'll improve a lot of the good players. So I think like that, I think now before the end of the season, you'll see a good upturn in the likes of Werner and Havertz. And even if the likes of Ziyech come back from injury and stuff like that, I'd say you'll see the emergence of a few, very good runs of form from Chelsea players. So again, they might be another shout for getting involved in the title race. Do you know what I mean? With the
Yeah, I
amount of
think
men that are involved in
when
that.
you look at Chelsea as a whole, though, I mean, I don't know, can you take some things away from Lampard? Like, was he hard done by in the sense that, look, whether or not they're big name worthy or players or not, but Loftus-Cheek gone to Fulham, Barkley's gone, Willian sold, Pedro sold, Antonio Rudiger. I said in a different group chat to a few of my friends there the other day that I was like, Rudiger's disappeared, and they were like, no, he played the last game. So like, he had been out of the team, I never even noticed, and come back into the team. But yet there's one of your supposedly rock solid centre halves. So like, can some of the decisions of getting rid of these players come back on Lampard? Like, is that fair on him? Like, had these players hung around, it gives him more depth in squad. And if things are going wrong, you can bring in one of these players and try and fit the system. You know, Mount last night, as you said, it was Tuchel putting his mark. It's that old thing that some managers do. It's like, I'm going to go in, I'm ruthless, I'm going to wean out the weak ones. If I drop you and you're going to complain, you're not for me, regardless of your talent. It's like, I'm here for hard workers as well, and you're going to give what you can to Chelsea. And I think if he's going to take that attitude, it could be the kick that Chelsea need to say, look, finally realize how underperforming you are right now. And, you know, some of it might be on Lampard, some of it might not be on Lampard in terms of the sales of players and things like that. That's from the higher authorities that be. But now that you've got Tuchel, you know, I think excuses have to go. You've got a top class manager, they've a good side, they've good players. This would want to start gelling for them. Obviously, not, as we always say, things don't happen overnight. It'll want to start gelling, I'd say, mid to the end of February. You'd want to start seeing some sort of cohesiveness coming into Chelsea. You'll have had enough trainings with him by then to know philosophies and everything like that. He will know players. They'd want to rise up that table, or else you're going to be thinking, you know, should we have got rid of Lampard? Tuchel has done nothing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think he's in an awkward situation right now. He's a big rep coming into an underperforming club, and if he doesn't bring them up, it's going to affect his personal rep as a manager then as well.
Yeah. I think there's one guarantee from this, is that Thomas Tuchel will be sacked within 3 years. I think there's an absolute guarantee by that.
Yeah. I think the days of a Wenger or Ferguson, they're gone. It's like, and it, you know, you can look at it. It probably has a lot to do with transfers, because, like, I remember a time when Rio Ferdinand was like the most expensive player in the world at 30 million, and you're thinking, Christ, he's got to do something. That's a massive price tag. And now 30 million is getting you championship players. You know, it's getting you low league, Premier League strikers and centre backs, and you're thinking, like, this has gone crazy. So because it's become such a business now, you know, you look at it, you put it into the context of any other business outside of football. If you've got a structure and you've got the CEO and then you've got underperforming staff, of course you're going to chuck them if you're underperforming. You don't have time to give them a chance to prove themselves because things have gone bad now. And I think that's just the way football's gone. It's like, right, you've got a couple of months, set a marker, we'll see how you go, but as soon as you start going downhill, you're gone.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot more cutthroat in the last few years.
It's ruthless, especially with Abramovich. It's absolutely ruthless.
And I suppose as well, when you look at, I think it was Abramovich's first ever time, or very rare of him to do, but he released obviously like a statement thanking Frank Lampard, saying on a personal level, they're still friends. Obviously, from a business side of things, it didn't quite work out. But I was trying to put myself into a Chelsea fan's shoes, just to be like, would I be excited by Thomas Tuchel coming in? Am I not? Is he a winner? Is he not a winner? I think any of us could have won something with Paris Saint-Germain and not have a clue about any sort of tactics. We would have won something with Paris Saint-Germain, I think.
Yeah.
So I kind of scratched that off, that winning with something with Paris Saint-Germain isn't a huge achievement. Then I was looking back at his Dortmund time, and he won a German Cup. And obviously in that period, you're coming up against a very, very, very good Bayern Munich side. And I do think Tuchel with Dortmund, I think he went on a run of 27 games unbeaten, which is obviously quite good numbers, considering kind of no matter what league you're competing in. To go 27 games unbeaten is a huge achievement. But then again, I was trying to put myself back into the shoes of a Chelsea fan. How much baggage does Thomas Tuchel bring? He had a fallen out at Dortmund, and he had a fallen out with Paris Saint-Germain. As we all just said, that Abramovich doesn't give his managers that much time. He likes to probably dictate a lot that's going on, or it's Bruce Buck that's the chairman there. I think they like to have a very hands-on approach. How do you see his relationship going with Abramovich or with the Chelsea hierarchy?
I wouldn't be surprised now if it does come to a head. Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah, like you were saying, like, you know, if he has a track record of falling out with kind of the heads of the clubs, like Abramovich is known worldwide in the football world as one of the most cutthroat owners of any club in any league. So yeah, if it's a case of, you know, maybe Tuchel isn't quite performing as well as Abramovich wants, or you know, he's not getting the players that he wants. You know, like Abramovich can tend to, you know, step in and pick a player that he wants along the lines of Shevchenko and stuff like that. I think it'll be interesting. Like, you know yourself, like that, they don't last very long at Chelsea. You know, 1 year on average since, you know, the mid 2000s. So yeah, I think it'll be an interesting one, because the way Tuchel seems to kind of come out with these kind of things, I would say it'll probably be quite a public thing. If he's having issues with the owners and stuff like that, he seems to be, you know, happy to speak his mind in press conferences and stuff, and come out with controversial things. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting going forward.
It's either going to be a feast or a famine for them. Like, it's going to be, you know, it could be a case where two loggerheads are going to come to clash with Abramovich and Tuchel, and you're going to think it's gone pear-shaped, this whole thing has exploded in our face and we're done. Or the other side of it is, are you going to have two such sturdy characters coming together that it could create something class? Like, it could be the turning point that Tuchel's going to know what he wants and demand it, and Abramovich is going to have to realize, sort of, you know, I've hired this lad now, and he's stern character, he knows what he's doing, he knows what he's talking about. Am I going to get on board with these things he's saying and put my trust in him? So, I mean, I hope as a United fan it doesn't, that it doesn't go great. As a football fan, I mean, if you're to put yourself in a neutral shoes, you want to see as many teams at the top of the league as possible on close points coming down to the final weeks, that it's an intense watch, and you're thinking, which horse is going to win this race? But from a United fan, I want as little around us being successful as possible. So, you know, time will tell. I mean, with Tuchel, it could be good.
But the thing is, with Chelsea, you look at Chelsea's model over the years, and it's brought success. It's won them a Champions League. It's won them FA Cups. I think it's 3 Premier Leagues in the last 10 years, which is quite good going, considering how difficult it is to win back-to-back leagues, and how difficult it is nowadays just to win a league, because you have obviously Man City, Liverpool dominating over the last couple of years. It obviously brings success. So if it's bringing success, Abramovich is obviously going to stick with that model, even if it does mean 13 managers in 13 years. But I suppose when we kind of look at our fancy football teams, I suppose we're thankful that we don't have owners making decisions whether we're going to get fired, because I think at this stage, definitely myself and Eno would have been fired early on in the season with our league.
Oh, I'd be long gone. Yeah, I'd be long gone.
I'm straight. I'm literally grasping that mid-table spot with every bit of might I have.
Ian, I was going to ask you just to let everyone listening, let them know what your team name is.
My team name.
Yeah, from
Do you know what? I've actually forgotten it.
Brilliant.
Oh my god! Do you have it in front of you?
Gary has it covered.
I have it here. Hang on.
What? I've actually forgotten it.
Isn't it Patético Madrid?
Oh, Patético Madrid. Yeah. Oh, that's the. I honest to God, I was going to FIFA there, and I was thinking, what's my ultimate team name? I think it's the same. Yeah,
okay, that just shows how involved Ian is with fancy football.
I wouldn't mind. I've absolutely no excuse because I'm on it 2 or 3 times a week, thinking how can I change it up for this week? Who will I bring in? Will I take the -4 hit? And like the only thing I did this week was bring in Mikel Antonio for Callum Wilson, and it proved a success with the assist. But I mean, Souček was the real winner for me this week, thank God.
Absolutely. And you weren't one of the lads that had him on the bench, no?
No, he was sitting in centre midfield, sitting pretty.
Yeah, I was that as well.
Yeah,
three of us had Souček in mid.
Yeah,
nice one. And guys, I'm not going to lie. Earlier on in the game week, I had made a change. I took Zoom out, put Justin in from Leicester, and then all of a sudden the news broke that Vardy's out injured and Kevin De Bruyne is out injured. So I was like, okay, I'm only going to take a -4 point hit. So if I was able to take make more subs, Souček was coming out for me. So in a way, Vardy getting injured, Kevin De Bruyne getting injured was a blessing in disguise that I had to keep the lads in. Obviously brought in Sterling for Kevin De Bruyne, got me an assist, got me a goal as well.
Yeah.
I was really, really considering, I think I sent it into the group whether to go with or who everyone was captaining, and at the time I was thinking Fernandes, Sterling. I can see goals against West Brom, but I can also see goals for United against Sheffield United. If I had went with Sterling as captain, it would have been a good differential, but I went with my heart and went with Fernandes.
Fernandes, actually, I don't know if you saw it on the Twitter page. I can't remember was it put into the group or not. 2.7 million fantasy football players captained Fernandes.
Yeah.
And he drew a blank.
But yeah, it was one of them as well.
Another league I'm in anyway, definitely half of us at least had Fernandes captain, and there was some odd ones in there. I do feel sorry for one lad in another league that I'm in who captained Bamford, and he got taken off after 58 minutes with 1 point. So I mean, in that respect, at least Fernandes got 2.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one of the lads, I think Jason in our group, another Mullingar man, Abraham as captain, and again he didn't start, came on, got a point, captained them 2 points. One thing I was going to say is, could you imagine fancy football without the chips, without captains, without captains, without triple captains, without bench boost? How much closer would it be? Because sometimes it does come down to getting your captain right. Obviously, we all captained Bruno Fernandes. We got the 4 points. But the fact that 2.9 million other people did it, we didn't really lose out in that sense. It was the Součeks, or it was the Sterlings, or it was the Gundigans that were winning you the points this week. It would be interesting, wouldn't it, to do fancy football where there was no captain, where
it'd be very interesting.
Things weren't making the difference.
Yeah, I think that's what makes or breaks it for you. Like, your captain pick is huge. Like, if you go back over your game weeks and, check and see who you captained and see who basically you should have captained in hindsight, points difference is usually massive. There's been so many years where me picking the wrong player is why I'm floundering in mid-table and not up near the top. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not like you're saying, it's not like you're not making similar decisions, or you're not putting as much time into the thinking behind the decisions.
Yeah.
It's just the unfortunate thing of
just
fancying someone's chances over another.
The bench came back to haunt me as well this week. I played the bench boost on the double game week. I don't know why I did it, because one of my players wasn't going to play and the other 3 only had a single game week. So what possessed me to do that when I had 11 players on the pitch with a double game week, to waste that? But this week, I left Vardy in the team and just benched him. I said I wasn't going to sell him. I'm going to keep him in there for when he returns. I had Harrison, who got Leeds goal, and I was sitting here with my brother the other night watching the match, and I just turned around and I said to him, "It's grand, as long as Harrison doesn't do anything now, I won't regret playing. I won't regret playing anything." And he literally turned around to me and he said, "Flick over to the Leeds game," because we were a few seconds behind. He goes, "Flick over to the Leeds game." And here was Harrison punting the ball into the bottom corner. And third sub all season has been Kilman from Wolves, centre half. Very rarely does anything. He did a bit at the start of the season, and I didn't have him. And because he was cheap, I brought him in one week. Third sub, 0-0 against Chelsea, 6 points. And here I am with Phil Foden on a point and Bamford on a point, and I've got 13, maybe 15 if I include my keeper sitting on the bench. And you're kind of thinking to yourself, no matter how well you think it's going with Souček or Cresswell or whoever else is getting you points, it's like the old Lotto saying, or the Tato ad was it, there's always one.
Yeah.
There's always one that will get you. And I was sick and looking at it, and I still am, because I'm trying to climb positions in this league that we're in, and I'm sick of seeing the number 20 beside my name. I'm just like, please just rise up that table. Like,
it is. It's absolutely sickening. Like that. The fact that there was both Vardy and De Bruyne injured, like I'm sure it did for most people, threw an absolute spanner in what you could have planned for the week. Because I did similar to Ian. I only got out one of them because I did quite well last week, but I had taken a -8 points hit for that. So I was like, I don't want to be taking points hits. I don't want to, making a habit of taking points hits. So I was like, I have a couple of decent enough lads on the bench who are playing. So I'll just leave Vardy on the bench, sell De Bruyne, and then just make do. Like, I'm fairly well set up for the week. But like that's why I got in Fernandez, because I was like, okay, well, at home to Sheffield United, if you're looking at any of even the polls on some of the Twitter feeds or anything, like, 70 or 80% of people are saying like he's the one to captain. Do you know what I mean? So like 100% you need to get him in. Where I was really like, oh, I'd love to get in Gundogan as well. But I was like, no, like I can't be getting the two of them in and taking a -4. Taking a -4 points hit and still having an injured Vardy on the bench, like, do you know what I mean? Where like you would probably have to get rid of him next week as well. So I was just like, okay, fine. Surely he'll get like an assist now, but that'll be it.
I do think, Dave, you're in a slightly better position than both myself and Ian, where you're top of the table in terms of being manager of the month. So you taking those -4s or -8s can be detrimental to you winning 20 quid this month.
Yeah.
Whereas myself and Ian could potentially take a -4 or -8 that could benefit us more in the long run. But you're
exactly,
at the moment more short-term goal. You have one more game week. I think you're only a point or two ahead.
I looked at it this evening. Yeah. Whoever, I can't remember. Is it a Connor, I think?
Yeah, I think Connor Keane, isn't it? Yeah, Connor Keane, I think.
I think so. And I looked at both our teams. We both have Harry Kane playing tonight, and that's the only player we have. So we'll finish on the same distance between us after tonight. I'm only 1 point ahead of him. Literally 1 point ahead of him. With, as you said, one more game week in January. So maybe not taking the -4 will do me well.
I think I've only had 1 month where I was even remotely in with a shout win the manager of the month. I think it was like November. I remember looking at it at one stage thinking, I'm second in this, what's going on? I've never performed this well in fantasy before. And then, of course, I ended up staying in second, I think, or coming third. But like, I've never had the honour of, seeing Gaza Quinn revolute you €20 at the end of a month. I'm just not there yet.
Well, that's what happened to me. I almost forgot about the manager of the month because I've never been in with a shout. Like say last year, I ended up coming fourth in the league, but that was just from a purely like decent run in near the end, and I happened to, jump up a few places. But like that in one particular month, I've never had a stellar month. So when Gary was saying last week, we're like, oh, you're leading the manager of the month this week. I was like, oh, class, yeah, I can get my money back.
And obviously, like we were saying last week, it does make a difference to fantasy football when there's those monthly prizes of 20 quid, or certain months there's 30 quid. So you can potentially finish, let's go with 20, you could potentially finish 20th in the league but come away with a profit of 10 quid. Like that's the kind of the joys of a league like this. And obviously the more people we get on board, the more prizes we can give out. I think we said obviously there's monthly prizes, and I think there's prizes for top 6 finishes. But I was going to ask you, Dave, obviously not to give too much away in case Connor is listening. What's your plan for the final game week of the month of January? What kind of approach are you going to go with?
I'm going to kind of, keep it steady, keep it how I have done the last couple of weeks, which is just, I've kind of set the team up with kind of 3 or 4 weeks in mind. So the team I have currently should be fairly well set up for next week's game week, or for this weekend's game week. Is it? Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It's such a quick turnaround that we don't really have time to almost chat about it, because by the time the pod comes out, it could be borderline kind of deadline day to select your teams and stuff. Not like anyone's going to really listen to myself or Ian anyways, because of how far we're down the league, but they might listen to someone who's potentially going to win manager of the month.
The lads who are below 20th, can learn a bit.
Catch up with us. We're in a league of our own.
Imagine I'm proud of being halfway up a ladder, looking down at everyone below me, thinking, well, at least I'm not down there.
Yeah.
That way to see now. No, my luck, I'll be 30th by Sunday night.
But sure, that's what the thing about it is as well. If you just string a couple of weeks together, you fly up the league. That with that week that I had last week, I was in 28th last week, and with the combination of last week's one and I'm doing decent enough in this week's one, it's above average anyway. I think I've gone up to about 14th or 15th.
I think for next. Sorry, go ahead, guys.
No, just gonna say you're in 13th.
Like that's mental. Like I was just looking to get above halfway for ages.
No, I think just looking for next week, it's going to be tough. I just have my team in front of me here because I actually hadn't looked ahead. I usually wait definitely until the last fixture is done, up until the night before, because I'm terrified of hearing that headline: training ground injury, and warm-up injury.
COVID outburst.
Yeah. Warm-up injury you can do nothing about. Your team's in at that stage. But I'm looking here. I've got 3 West Ham players in Cresswell, Souček and Antonio playing against Mo Salah. So there's 4 of my 11 in the same game. Like that, knowing West Ham, and you can imagine Liverpool as well, that will have goals. So Cresswell's probably not going to get a clean sheet out of that. So that makes me wonder then, how is he going to perform on an attacking front? Is he going to get the assist from the set pieces that he's used to? He's an overlapping full back, so he's always bombing forward. But I think if you're looking at a captain, it's got to be someone from Man City. They're playing Sheffield United. City are at home. They're not going to make the same mistakes our United team did last night.
This is the exact same logic I had.
Yeah. I mean, you can talk about Sheffield United as I did during this with their 8-man wall there. But you look at City and recently how they've just picked apart teams, and like they just pass. You come to us, you get the ball off us, and then as soon as you do 1, 2, 3 triangles between fullbacks and centre mids, and they're in by you. And I mean they've done it so well. The only thing that's wrecking my head is this rotation that we're back to again, where it's Foden and Silva one day, then suddenly it's Mahrez and Sterling's through the middle. Your midfield 3 doesn't seem to be stirring a whole lot. I mean, it's Gundogan and Rodri are fairly set there now that kind of, De Bruyne is out and Bernardo Silva is playing more as a wide of the front 3 as opposed to being in that little triangle in the middle.
Yeah.
And I have Foden. And, I mean, look, they couldn't wait another minute on Tuesday night just to give me 2 points rather than 1. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I've Cancelo there, and he's kind of sticking out as a captain. There's a lot of rotation going on there as well. There was Cancelo, Walker, Zinchenko, Mendy, and it was working as rotation between the 4 of them. I remember bringing in Mendy because they were guaranteed 6 points, and he got it, and they were guaranteed 6 points the next week for another clean sheet, and I said I'd leave him in, and they dropped him. And that's just what you're up against when you have Man City players in your team. You can be full of hope, and they'll just dash it. An hour before kickoff, you check your phone, you realise none of your players are starting. So it's hard to know where to go with them.
That kind of very much just sums up fantasy football, where I think back in the day, and I say 11 years ago doing fantasy football, you were guaranteed to have the same players playing every week. But now, with the way the game is, there's so many rotations. Like you said, Foden in 1 week, Mahrez in the next, Sterling in the next, Sterling out the next week, especially with the fullbacks. But I just think with Cancelo, I think when Walker comes back, I think Walker will go back into right back. But I do think Cancelo has earned a position at left back going forward. And then potentially the odd game here and there, they might throw in Zinchenko. I don't know how much Mendy's actually going to play now between those. I just think Diaz at the moment is the only guaranteed, and Cancelo obviously at the moment, but they're the only two guaranteed defenders for City. Stones obviously on his form, but there's no guarantee Stones won't be injured.
The other thing that fantasy has done really, and I suppose it's really come to light since the restart of the league at the summer of 2020 there, when obviously the COVID break, was that the staggered kickoffs and the fact that like you could on a Saturday morning to a Sunday night, you could nearly go through 2 days watching every game.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the only things ever where I would sit down and I could watch West Ham and Brighton just because I've got Souček playing in midfield. Like them two, like fair enough, West Ham now we're up near the top, but like that game should have no bearing on my interest in football, because they're down the other end of the league to the team I'm watching, obviously in United, and who I should be paying attention to. And yet I'm thinking, okay, I'm on for manager of the month here in fantasy, €20 on the line next week. I've got Souček playing here. Wouldn't mind if he got 2 goals. And it's probably, fantasy football is probably the main reason for most of my aggressive outbursts as a person in general. That like I'll check my phone at 2 o'clock for a 3 o'clock kickoff, and it's like, oh, Foden's dropped again. And I'll be annoyed. I honestly will be annoyed for that 5 or 10 minutes. I'll be thinking, oh, the lads are going to overlap me here now. They've got Sterling. He's going to score a hat-trick as captain. And it's just all over the place. I'm like, your mind just goes straight to, I'm bottom of the league after this. It's a mad system, like how the whole thing works.
I just have to say, just before you come in there, Dave, I just have to, I can't wait for Ian to listen back to this podcast, because you guys obviously don't hear the intro. I just can't wait for Ian. You know what, Ian? I want a reaction. I want you to record your reaction of listening to your intro.
It was ominous enough when you text me about 20 minutes before we started this and just go, I have your intro done, and just laughing faces after it. I was like, oh my! I was like, what angle has he gone with here?
Sorry, Dave. We go back to you on fantasy football.
Yeah, no, I was just going to pick up on what Ian was saying. Like, it's so infuriating. Like, especially like you were saying, like the City midfield. Like, I had Mahrez for weeks, and like that, you get a lot of the time you get in a player based on their form or based on their previous 3 or 4 games, and you're like, class, grand. He seems to be playing. Guardiola seems to have him playing pretty much every week. He's in form, he's doing well, and then you could pick any number of them, and then he won't play for 2 games, or he'll come on with 20 minutes to go for 2 games in a row. He'll start one, he'll bench him the next week. It's a disaster. Like,
but it's only natural for us to pick, players based on form. Like, you make your very first team of the year, you're going to base it on the big names and the performers from the season before, and there might be 1 or 2 new signings that you think, oh, I'm going to bring him in, i.e. me with Werner at the start of the year. I was so excited to see him in the Premier League.
Yeah, I was like that as well.
It's only natural. And it's as if managers don't think of us when they're making their teams. It's that, like, winning the Premier League is more important than my fantasy football team. Like, yeah. I think it's a farce, really, to be honest.
It is a farce. To think a manager is considering winning a league, but yet they're taking off Patrick Bamford in the 59th minute.
It's so inconsiderate. It's so inconsiderate.
I'll tell you, it should be made a rule, unless it's for injury, no subs before 60. Just, they have to get 2 points. There's nothing more infuriating than your player getting 1 point. It just makes me blood boil.
It's sickening. Or if you're watching the match live and they've put up the board and they're walking off, and you see it ticking down, and you're like, oh my God, don't walk off the pitch until it's 60. You're fucked.
Yeah. Who did that? Was it it might have been Foden, I think, at the weekend for City, got taken off at like 59, 40 something. I was thinking, okay, technically that is the 60th minute, because 0 to 1 is the first minute, 1 to 2 is the second. I was like, technically that's the 60, and then they only gave him 59. I was sickened.
So just looking, just before we obviously wrap the pod up, what are we thinking then for the next game week? Hands up if you're putting Gundogan in.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Guarantee it. Again, classic fantasy football.
He's not going to do anything. Guarantee he won't do anything.
Won't get any points.
The only thing that would, sorry to cut across you guys, the only thing that would draw appeal to me with Gundogan is now that De Bruyne is out, he is the penalty taker.
Yeah.
And I mean, given Bard's reputation.
Yeah, I think that's okay as well. And I think we chatted on one of the trial pods with Donica as well. We're saying how important it is this season to actually have penalty takers in your team, because the amount of penalties that are obviously dished out. But kind of the two changes, I'm obviously going to go with a -4 point hit. But I'm going to do obviously 2 transfers, 1 free, 1 -4. I'm going to get Kane back in for Vardy, because I took him out for the
double game week.
The double game week, I think it was the free hit or the wild card that I played. So Kane in for Vardy, Gundogan in for Harvey Barnes. Apologies to Donica. I know he recommended him a couple of weeks back and we went and he was getting good points. But kind of like you were saying, Dave, kind of trying to build over the next couple of weeks towards getting the likes of Grealish, Watkins and Target at Villa, because they've obviously a couple of games to catch up. They're going to have a double game week somewhere. Also, City are going to have a double game week somewhere. So that's kind of my thinking at the moment. Again,
exactly.
The lads in, a few more, obviously Gundogan in, that'll be my third City player with Diaz and Sterling. And kind of build towards that next double game week, whenever it will be. We obviously don't know. But probably more than likely going to take a chance with captain and Sterling this weekend against Sheffield United at home for City.
Yeah, I think you could do worse than captain and Sterling against Sheffield United, now, to be honest. I think that's a good shout. From what Ian was saying earlier, mine would be similar enough. I have 3 West Ham players as well. I don't have Antonio, although I had looked at getting him in, but I have Kufal, Suchek and Cresswell. So that's I just need to figure out something to do there. As I said to you, like, I had Pereira, obviously, who did very well over the double game week. He was on my bench this week. And West Brom are at home to Fulham, so I could just stick him in instead of one of them, and not have to do a point hit. Like even as well, I have your man Mitchell on the bench, who's the Crystal Palace defender. Yeah, because he's just dirt cheap, but he's playing every game. So I think I might end up doing something with Pereira, and then maybe making one transfer, getting in Gundogan, because I don't really think I can have 2 West Ham defenders against Liverpool, unless Liverpool play atrocious against tonight, and it just doesn't look like they're ever going to get back into form.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's what I'm going to have to do.
Yeah, it's a strange one. Like, I was looking at mine and I was thinking, like, am I going to take a 4-point hit? And I could just do a Foden for Gundogan straight swap and try and jig the players I have. I mean, I look at it here, I could put Kilman back in the lineup. He's away to Palace, but if they're going to play him now, I mean, it could be worth a shout. I'm in a goalkeeper dilemma as well. Nick Pope, I think I've had him for about 3 seasons now. I just tend not to change him. Yeah, and he's away to Chelsea. I've got Guaita as my sub at home to Wolves. So either or of those, I didn't think Wolves would get a draw. I didn't think Wolves would get a draw against Chelsea. So, I had Kilman third sub. So do I bring him into my centre-back line now or not? But the other thing I'm going with is, obviously, as we're recording this, Liverpool and Spurs is on in a few minutes, and I am going to judge whether or not I take a 4-point hit on how Salah does tonight. I think it's been too many weeks now where it's 2 points, 2 points, 2 points, and I'm just sitting. Now, the only game I wanted him to only get 2 points was obviously against United. But, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, like, that is such a high-value player that if I got rid of him, along with Foden maybe, you could be talking, like you said, Gaz, would be to try and get in those players on the big performing teams like City who have that double game week coming up, that you're not going to be worrying about it at the time, thinking I need to get them in now and take a 4-point hit, when it could be feasible maybe in the next week or two to phase them in. So I definitely think anyway Salah is on his last legs tonight. So
yeah. I think the likes of that as well, if you did end up, transferring Salah out, like that gives you a lot of funds to be playing around with to try and restructure.
Yeah, but it's so typical of my luck. It's happened to me, and I'd say the other boys in the league will listen to this and they'd be like, I feel you. You transfer him out and he'll score a hat-trick next week. Or something will happen. Like, I had my free hit week the week maybe 2 or 3 game weeks ago where it was the real low level of fixtures.
Oh, yeah.
And I free hit Gundogan in that week for City. And it was the 1 week either side of that he did all the damage. He did the damage the week before and every week since. But on the free hit week, he did nothing for me. And I didn't bring him back in after the free hit. I brought Foden in instead. And, I mean, Gundogan's just run riot since then. So, like, these are just... They're the breaks. I mean, that's why... I think that's why we're so addicted to it. It's the one thing in the world, like, you won't mind anyone being addicted to making a fantasy football team, because it's healthy and unhealthy, I think. If you've got an aggressive streak, like even Dave, you with the TV and like Liverpool losing 7-2 to Villa, like, don't be near anything valuable when something goes wrong with your fantasy team, because
100%.
you could let loose.
Just to clarify, Dave, you didn't break your TV, did you?
You didn't break your TV.
Not yet.
In your mind, you were just in a China shop, just throwing everything at the wall.
100%.
Anyways, lads, that was words of wisdom, and again, we'll find out in a couple of days whether our thinking, our ideas will actually reward, whether we'll be successful with our choices, and whether we climb up the table, and obviously whether Dave O'Hara will actually become manager of the month. But thanks very much, gents, for joining us. And again, I'm sure we'll have you on at some stage throughout the season. We hope you enjoyed it. And until another week, just before we finish up, just to make sure to check out our Instagram page, the Fantasy Kickabout, and where you'll find all our links to the Apple Podcast and Spotify. Like I said, until another week, thank you very much, gents. We'll chat to you soon.
Thanks, Milgate.
Thanks very much.